Then one night, disaster struck again. A violent storm tore through the valley, ripping our tent from its stakes. Rain poured in, drenching us as we huddled underneath the collapsed canvas. Cold, wet, exhausted, I remember lying there thinking, "Get me out of here!" Welcome back to Doc Wales Diaries. Today, I want to take you on a journey, one of hardship, resilience and faith, as I continue sharing my time in Pakistan as a missionary doctor. I'll begin, as always, with my favorite verse, Ephesians 2 verse 10, we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do the work He appoints us to do. This story is not an easy one, but it's necessary. It's about finding God's presence in the midst of disaster, about how even in the darkest moments He calls and He can use ordinary people like you and me to bring hope where hope seems lost. Let's journey back to Pakistan in 2005 when the earth shook and life as many knew it was forever changed. The Swat and Sirhan valleys of northwest Pakistan, nestled between Afghanistan and Kashmir, were once full of life. Bustling townships, rich in culture and history, where families built their futures and children played without fear. But in 2005, everything changed. The earth shook violently, leveling homes, schools, and entire communities in an instant. The devastation was overwhelming, but the suffering didn't end with the earthquake. Political unrest and the growing influence of the Taliban tightened their grip on an already broken people, replacing hope with fear. One of the hardest moments I mentioned in our earlier episode was the collapse of a school in Swat Valley. Hundreds of children were inside when the walls caved in. I stood among many ruined buildings, the weight of the loss pressing down on me. I wrestled with questions I had no answers to. And so despite the challenges, we pressed on, because hope is not found in the absence of suffering, but in the presence of God within it. Our first camp was set up in a picturesque clearing in the Sirhan Valley. A field hospital stood ready, and for a brief moment we felt accomplished. But then the news reached us. There were people trapped in remote mountainous areas with no medical relief in sight. We had a choice: stay in relative safety or risk the treacherous roads to bring aid to those in need. We chose the latter. The journey was perilous. Landslides constantly blocked our path, forcing us to return back more than once. Small stones would cascade down the cliffs, warning us of an impending rockfall. If we dared to glance over the side of the one-track road, we could see vehicles that had been swallowed by the abyss. Men digging through the wreckage to recover the lost. When we finally made it through, we set up base camp in the remote village of Panjur, aided by the Khostani tribal people. They were fascinated by our presence, gathering on the ridges to watch what we were doing. Our tent became our sanctuary, a warm refuge with a wood stove, guarded by local tribesmen who each morning prepared butter pancakes and strong coffee. The hospitality amidst the hardship was humbling. Pakistan's mountains are very unforgiving. Aftershocks rattled us daily, and the very ground beneath our feet seemed unstable. Our bathrooms were crumbling buildings, where in the dead of night we ventured out with oil lamps, hoping the walls wouldn't cave in. Then one night, disaster struck again. A violent storm tore through the valley, ripping our tent from its stakes. Rain poured in, drenching us as we huddled underneath the collapsed canvas. Cold, wet, exhausted, I remember lying there thinking, "Get me out of here!" But then a still small voice, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 9. Morning came, and with it a renewed sense of purpose. The Pakistani doctors, the Hostani guards, and our own exhausted team pulled together, determined to rebuild what had fallen. Within hours, the tent stood tall once again. Then as the chill of the night gave way to the warmth of the rising sun, breakfast was served, eggs and pancakes, a small but comforting reminder that even in the midst of hardship, there is still room for gratitude. The Pakistani army base in Panjshir became our operations hub, but getting supplies to the most devastated villages seemed impossible. The roads were impassable, no vehicle could make the journey. And then a solution appeared. The army secured pack horses. With medical supplies strapped to their backs, we set out on foot, making our way through the treacherous terrain. It was slow, dangerous work, but there was an unshakable sense of our purpose. We were not alone in this mission. Alongside us, a World Vision team had set up camp, determined to provide aid, yet their presence was not welcomed by all. Within hours of raising their flag, it was torn down and replaced by the Muslim crescent, a silent yet clear message: "We are watching you." But amidst the tension and exhaustion, there were moments of unexpected joy. Captain Imran, one of the Pakistani officers, had his soldiers cast nets into the nearby river. That night we feasted on fresh trout, our voices rising in song with the army boys, hymns of hope echoing through the valley. On our final evening in Panjshir, the Pakistani doctors honored me with a curious request. As their guests, I had to inspect the goat they had chosen for our farewell feast. Examining its legs, careful not to look in its eyes, I gave my approval. "Oh, meaty thighs!" Laughter filled the air. For a brief moment the weight of tragedy lifted, replaced by the warmth of friendship. The goat was roasted on a spit over an open fire. We celebrated at this impromptu supper of what together we had achieved. Finally, as the aftershocks grew less frequent and the landslides slowed, we made our way back to Mansehra, where our main office was based. Looking back, I can see threads of God's faithfulness woven through every trial. He doesn't promise life without hardship, but it does promise to be with us through it all. Thank you for joining me on this journey. There are more stories to come. Stories of faith, resilience, and the transformative power of love in the darkest of places. Until next time, may you walk in His grace. Blessings, Doc Wales.